The auditorium was filled with noise that afternoon. Students were laughing, talking, and showing off to each other. It was the day of talent show auditions at Riverside Middle School, and everyone wanted a chance to be on that stage. Some kids had been practicing for weeks. Others just wanted attention. But in the very last row, sitting alone in a corner seat, was a 12-year-old girl named Lily. She was not like the others. She did not talk to anyone. She did not laugh or joke around. She just sat there quietly, holding something inside her pocket. It was a small photograph, folded and worn from being touched too many times. The photo showed a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. That woman was her mother, Rosa. Lily had always been the quiet one. At school, most students did not even know her name. She was the kind of girl who walked through the hallways without making a sound. She ate her lunch alone near the library every single day. Teachers sometimes forgot she was even in the classroom. When they asked questions, they rarely looked her way. And when they did, Lily would answer in a voice so soft that people had to lean in just to hear her. But today was different. Today, something inside her was pushing her to do something she had never done before. One by one, students walked up to the stage to audition. A boy played the drums so loud that the walls shook. A group of girls danced to a popular song while the crowd cheered. Another student told jokes that made everyone laugh. Each performance was followed by clapping and whistling. The energy in the room was high. Everyone wanted to be noticed. Everyone wanted to shine. Lily watched all of this from the back row. Her heart was beating fast. Her hands were sweating. She kept touching the photograph in her pocket like it gave her strength. She had never performed in front of anyone before. Not once in her entire life. The thought of standing on that stage made her stomach twist with fear. But then she thought about her mother. Rosa had been sick for almost 2 years now. Cancer. That word had changed everything. Before the illness, Rosa used to fill their small house with music. She had been a pianist, a real one, who once played in big concert halls in front of hundreds of people. Lily remembered sitting beside her mother on the piano bench when she was little, watching her fingers dance across the black and white keys. The music was always so beautiful. It made Lily feel safe. It made her feel like nothing bad could ever happen. But then the sickness came. Rosa became too weak to play. She spent most of her time in bed now, too tired to even sit up for long. The piano in their living room had not been touched in months. It sat there like a ghost, covered in dust, reminding them both of what used to be. Lily hated that piano at first. She hated looking at it. She hated how quiet the house had become. But one night, about 3 years ago, something changed. Her mother had just come home from another hospital visit. She was crying softly in her room, thinking Lily could not hear. But Lily heard everything. That night, after Rosa fell asleep, Lily walked into the living room. She sat down at the piano and touched one key. Then, another. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper. She did not know what she was doing. She just knew she wanted to feel close to her mother again. That was the beginning. For 3 long years, Lily taught herself how to play. She watched old videos of her mother's concerts on the family computer. She studied every movement of her fingers. She practiced late at night when Rosa was asleep, using headphones so no one could hear. She made mistakes. Lots of them. Some nights, she wanted to give up. But every time she felt like quitting, she thought about her mother's face when she used to play. Lily wanted to give that feeling back to her. She had been planning to surprise her mother on her next birthday. She had been working on a special piece, the same one Rosa used to play at her biggest concerts. But last week, the doctors gave them bad news. Rosa was getting weaker. They said she might not make it to her birthday. Lily's heart broke when she heard those words. She locked herself in her room and cried for hours. All that practice, all those nights. And now, there might not be a birthday to play for. But then she heard about the talent show. It was happening in 2 weeks. If she could perform there, Maybe she could find a way to let her mother hear it. Maybe she could give her that gift before it was too late. So here she was, sitting in the back row, trying to find the courage to raise her hand. The music teacher, a kind woman named Mrs. Reyes, stood at the front of the auditorium. She looked at her clipboard and then at the crowd. Most of the students who wanted to audition had already gone. The room was starting to get restless. Some kids were packing up their things, ready to leave. Then Mrs. Reyes asked one final question. She looked around and said, "Is there anyone else who would like to audition today?" Lily's heart stopped. This was it. This was her chance. Her hand started to shake. She could feel the eyes of the room, even though no one was looking at her. She could hear the voice in her head telling her to stay quiet, to stay invisible, to not embarrass herself. But then she touched the photograph in her pocket one more time. She thought of her mother lying in that hospital bed. She thought of all those nights spent practicing alone. She thought of the music that had been locked inside her for so long. And slowly, very slowly, Lily raised her hand. A few students turned around to look. Some of them whispered, others laughed quietly. Lily could hear them. She knew what they were thinking. That is the weird girl. The one who never talks. What could she possibly do? Mrs. Reyes looked surprised, but she smiled kindly and nodded. She waved Lily toward the stage. The walk from the back row to the front felt like the longest walk of Lily's life. Her legs were weak, her face was hot. She could feel everyone staring at her. Some students were already smirking, waiting for her to fail. When she finally reached the stage, Mrs. Reyes asked her gently, "What will you be performing today, dear?" Lily swallowed hard. She looked down at her shoes for a moment. Then she looked up, and in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said the words that would change everything. "I would like to play the piano. For my mom." The room went quiet. Not because they were impressed, but because they did not expect her to say anything at all. A few students exchanged confused looks. Someone in the back laughed again, but Lily did not care anymore. She had already made her choice. She walked over to the old piano, sitting at the side of the stage. She sat down on the bench. She placed her small hands on the keys, and in that moment, she was no longer the quiet girl that nobody noticed. She was a daughter with a mission, a girl with a secret, a heart full of love, and a story waiting to be heard. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and got ready to play. The auditorium was still. Everyone was watching. Lily sat at the piano, with her hands resting gently on the keys. She could feel the weight of all those eyes on her back. She could hear the soft whispers floating through the room. But she did not turn around. She did not look at anyone. She just focused on the keys in front of her. Her mind drifted back to the very first night she had touched this instrument. It was 3 years ago, on a cold evening in November. Her mother had just returned from another round of treatment at the hospital. Rosa had tried to smile when she walked through the door, but Lily could see the tiredness in her eyes. She could see how much weight her mother had lost. She could see how hard it was for her to even stand. That night, Rosa went straight to bed. She did not eat dinner. She did not watch television. She just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Lily stood outside her door for a long time, wanting to go in, wanting to say something. But she did not know what to say. What do you say to your mother when she is slowly fading away? So instead, Lily walked into the living room. The old piano was sitting in the corner, untouched and forgotten. A thin layer of dust covered the keys. Lily remembered how her mother used to sit there every evening, filling the house with music. She remembered how Rosa would close her eyes while she played, lost in a world that only she could see. Lily sat down on the bench that night. She did not know how to play. She had never taken a single lesson, but something inside her needed to try. She pressed one key, then another. The sounds were random and ugly, nothing like the beautiful melodies her mother used to create. But still, Lily kept going. She found an old video on the family computer. It was a recording of one of her mother's concerts from many years ago. Rosa was younger in the video, healthier. Her hair was long and black, and her fingers moved across the piano like water flowing over stones. The piece she played was something called Ballade No. 1 by a composer named Chopin. Lily had heard it many times before. It was her mother's favorite. From that night on, Lily made a decision. She would learn to play that piece. She would teach herself, no matter how long it took. And one day, she would play it for her mother. It was not easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing Lily had ever done. She had no teacher. She had no books. All she had was that old video and a burning desire to learn. She watched her mother's hands over and over again, pausing and rewinding until she memorized every movement. Then she would go to the piano and try to copy what she saw. At first, her fingers refused to cooperate. They were clumsy and slow. She hit the wrong keys more times than she could count. Some nights, she got so frustrated that she wanted to slam the lid shut and never try again. But every time she felt like giving up, she thought about her mother. She thought about the way Rosa's face used to light up when she played. She thought about how music had once been her mother's whole life. And so Lily kept going. She practiced every single night after Rosa fell asleep. She used a pair of old headphones, plugged into a small digital keyboard, so that no one could hear her. She stayed up past midnight, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning, going over the same passages again and again. Her fingers started to hurt. Her eyes grew heavy. But she did not stop. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Slowly, very slowly, Lily began to improve. The notes started to come together. The melodies started to make sense. She learned how to control the volume, how to add emotion, how to make the music breathe. She was not perfect. She knew that. But she was getting better. There were many times when she almost got caught. One night, Rosa woke up to use the bathroom and heard a faint sound coming from the living room. Lily had forgotten to plug in her headphones all the way. She froze in terror, her heart pounding so loud she was sure her mother could hear it. But Rosa was too tired to investigate. She just went back to bed, and Lily let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Another time, Lily's younger cousin came to visit and found some of her handwritten notes about piano techniques. Lily made up a story about a school project and quickly hid the papers away. She could not let anyone find out. This was her secret, her gift, and she wanted it to be a surprise. As the months passed, Rosa's condition grew worse. She spent more and more time in the hospital. The treatments were hard on her body. She lost her hair. She lost her appetite. She lost the strength to walk on her own. But through it all, she never lost her smile. Every time Lily came to visit, Rosa would hold her hand and tell her how much she loved her. Lily wanted so badly to tell her mother the truth. She wanted to say, "Mom, I have been learning to play the piano. I have been practicing every night for 3 years. I am going to play your favorite song for you." But she held back. She wanted it to be perfect. She wanted to wait for the right moment. That moment was supposed to be Rosa's birthday. It was coming up in just 2 months. Lily had been counting down the days, imagining the look on her mother's face when she finally heard the music. She pictured Rosa sitting in her favorite chair, eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her lips. She pictured herself playing every note perfectly, pouring all her love into the keys. But then the doctors came with their terrible news. They said Rosa's body was not responding to treatment anymore. They said she was getting weaker by the day. They said she might not have much time left. When Lily heard those words, it felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. She could not breathe. She could not think. All she could do was cry. For days, Lily did not touch the piano. She did not watch the videos. She did not practice. What was the point? Her mother might not even make it to her birthday. All those years of work, all those sleepless nights. And now, it might all be for nothing. But then, one evening, something changed. Lily was sitting alone in her room when she heard a sound coming from downstairs. It was faint, barely there, but she recognized it immediately. It was music. Piano music. She rushed down the stairs and found her mother sitting at the old piano in the living room. Rosa's hands were trembling. Her fingers could barely press the keys. But she was trying. She was trying to play, even though every note seemed to take all the strength she had left. Tears were streaming down her face. But she did not stop. Lily stood in the doorway, unable to move. She watched her mother fight through the pain, watched her reach for something that had once come so easily. And in that moment, Lily understood something important. Music was not just about perfect notes or big performances. It was about love. It was about connection. It was about giving someone a piece of your heart. Rosa stopped playing and looked up. She saw Lily standing there and smiled weakly. She said, "I just wanted to hear it one more time." That night, Lily made a new decision. She was not going to wait for her mother's birthday. She was going to find another way. A way to share her gift before it was too late. And that was when she remembered the talent show. It was happening in 2 weeks. If she could get on that stage, maybe she could find a way to let her mother hear. Maybe she could give her the surprise she had been saving for so long. So the next day, Lily went to school with a new kind of fire burning inside her chest. She was scared. She was nervous. But she was also determined. She was going to audition. She was going to play. And somehow, some way, she was going to make sure her mother heard every single note. Now here she was, sitting at the piano in front of the whole school, ready to share her secret with the world. Lily closed her eyes and let her fingers rest on the cold piano keys. The auditorium behind her was filled with whispers and soft laughter. She knew what they were thinking. She knew they expected her to fail. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All she could think about was her mother. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first few notes floated into the air like gentle raindrops falling on a quiet lake. They were soft, almost shy, as if the music itself was nervous to come out. But then, something shifted. Lily's fingers found their rhythm. The notes grew stronger. The melody started to take shape. And suddenly, the whispers in the auditorium stopped. One by one, students lifted their heads. Phones were lowered. Conversations died. Even the kids who had been laughing just seconds ago were now sitting perfectly still, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. No one could understand what they were hearing. This was not possible. This was the quiet girl, the invisible one, the girl who never spoke above a whisper. How could she play like this? But Lily did not notice any of it. Her eyes were still closed. Her body swayed gently with the music. She was no longer in the auditorium. She was somewhere else entirely. She was back home, sitting beside her mother on the old piano bench. She was 5 years old again, watching Rosa's hands glide across the keys with effortless grace. She could smell her mother's perfume. She could hear her mother's voice, soft and warm, saying, "Listen to the music, my love. Let it tell you a story." And now, Lily was telling her own story. The piece she played was Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the same piece her mother had performed at her greatest concert. It was long and complex, filled with highs and lows, moments of calm and bursts of passion. It demanded everything from the person playing it, every ounce of skill, every drop of emotion, and Lily gave it all. Her fingers flew across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for someone her age. She hit every note with perfect timing. She controlled the volume like a master, going from the softest whisper to the loudest cry and back again. But what truly stunned everyone was not her technique. It was the feeling behind the music. There was pain in those notes. Real pain. the kind that comes from watching someone you love slowly slip away. There was longing, too, a deep and aching wish for things to be different. And underneath it all, there was love. A love so strong that it poured out of every chord, filling the room with something that words could never describe. Mrs. Reyes, the music teacher, was standing near the front of the auditorium. Her coffee cup was frozen halfway to her lips. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth had fallen open. She had been teaching music for over 20 years. She had seen talented students before, but this was something else. This was raw. This was real. This was a gift. Tears began to form in Mrs. Reyes's eyes. She set down her coffee cup and placed a hand over her heart. She could not look away. In the middle rows, a girl named Priya sat with her friends. She was one of the popular kids, the kind who always had something clever to say. Just a few minutes ago, she had been whispering jokes about Lily with the others. But now she was silent. Her eyes were glued to the stage, and her hands were gripping the armrests of her seat. She did not understand what was happening to her. Why did she feel like crying? Why did her chest feel so tight? Beside her, a boy named Daniel was having the same experience. He was a drummer, proud of his skills, and he had rolled his eyes when Lily walked up to the stage. But now he could not move. The music had wrapped itself around him like a blanket. He had never felt anything like this before. All around the auditorium, the same thing was happening. Students who had never paid attention to classical music were now completely captivated. Teachers who had stepped in to supervise were frozen in place. Even the janitor, who had been sweeping near the back door, had stopped to listen. Lily played on, unaware of the effect she was having. In her mind, she was not performing for these strangers. She was playing for one person only, her mother. She imagined Rosa sitting in the front row, healthy and strong, with that proud smile she used to wear. She imagined her mother closing her eyes and swaying to the music, just like she used to do. She imagined the two of them together, connected by something deeper than words. The tears came without warning. They rolled down Lily's cheeks and fell onto the piano keys. But she did not stop. She could not stop. The music had taken over. It was flowing through her, like a river, carrying all the love and grief and hope she had been holding inside for so long. The final section of the piece was the most difficult. It required speed, power, and absolute control. Lily had practiced it hundreds of times, but she had never played it perfectly. There was always one small mistake, one tiny slip. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid that she would mess up in front of everyone. But tonight, something was different. Her fingers moved with a confidence she had never felt before. The notes came out clean and clear, building and building toward the final climax. The music swelled, the emotion peaked. And then, with one last powerful chord, it was over. Lily's hands dropped to her sides. Her chest was heaving. Her face was wet with tears. She sat there in silence, her eyes still closed, not sure if she could even move. For a long moment, no one made a sound. The auditorium was completely still. It was as if everyone had forgotten how to breathe. And then Mrs. Reyes started to clap. It was slow at first, just her hands coming together in quiet applause. But then, another person joined in, and another, and another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, clapping and cheering louder than they had for any other performance that day. Lily opened her eyes and looked out at the crowd. She could not believe what she was seeing. People were standing. People were crying. People who had never even looked at her before were now staring at her like she was someone special. But Lily did not care about the applause. She did not care about the attention. There was only one thing on her mind. She stood up slowly and looked at Mrs. Reyes. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper, but the words came out clear. Can my mom watch the show from the hospital? The clapping began to fade. People exchanged confused looks. Mrs. Reyes stepped closer to the stage, her brow furrowed with concern. What do you mean, dear? Lily swallowed hard. She could feel everyone watching her. She knew she was about to share something deeply personal, but she did not care anymore. She had come too far to stop now. My mom is sick, she said, her voice cracking. She has cancer. She cannot leave the hospital, but I want her to hear me play. I have been practicing for 3 years, just for her. Please, is there any way she can watch? A wave of murmurs swept through the auditorium. Some students gasped. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Mrs. Reyes stood frozen, her hand pressed against her chest, struggling to find the right words. Finally, she walked up to the stage and placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. Her eyes were full of warmth and something that looked like determination. I do not know how yet, she said softly. But we are going to find a way. I promise you that. Lily nodded, her lips trembling. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. The news about Lily spread through the school like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew her name. Everyone knew her story. The invisible one who never raised her hand. She was now the girl who had made an entire auditorium cry with her piano playing. She was the girl whose mother was dying in a hospital bed. Students who had never spoken to Lily before suddenly wanted to talk to her. They stopped her in the hallways. They smiled at her in class. Some of them even apologized for the way they had treated her in the past. Lily did not know how to handle all the attention. She was not used to being seen, but she nodded politely and thanked them quietly, her mind still focused on one thing only: her mother. Mrs. Reyes had not forgotten her promise. The morning after the audition, she called an emergency meeting with the school principal, Mr. Torres. She told him everything. She described Lily's performance. She explained about Rosa's illness. She shared the desperate request Lily had made at the end of her audition. Mr. Torres listened carefully, his face serious but kind. When Mrs. Reyes finished speaking, there was a long pause. Then Mr. Torres leaned back in his chair and said, "We need to make this happen." Off. The problem was that the talent show was only 12 days away. Rosa was too weak to leave the hospital. Moving her was not an option. The doctors had made that very clear. So if Rosa could not come to the show would have to go to her. But how? Mrs. Reyes spent the next 2 days making phone calls. She contacted the local television station. She reached out to technology companies in the area. She even called the hospital to speak with Rosa's doctors. Most people she talked to were sympathetic, but no one had a clear solution. Setting up a live video stream from the school to the hospital was complicated. It required equipment, permissions, and technical support that the school simply did not have. Just when things seemed hopeless, something unexpected happened. A local news reporter named Mrs. Delgado heard about Lily's story from a friend who worked at the school. She was touched by it and decided to do a short segment about the young pianist and her dying mother. The story aired on the evening news, and within hours, it had been shared thousands of times on social media. People from all over the city began reaching out. They wanted to help. A small technology company offered to donate all the equipment needed for the live stream. A video production team volunteered to set everything up for free. The hospital agreed to prepare a special room where Rosa could watch the performance in comfort. Even the mayor's office called to offer support. Lily could not believe what was happening. She had never imagined that so many strangers would care about her story. She had never thought that her small request would turn into something so big. But here it was, unfolding right in front of her eyes. Back at school, the students decided to do their part as well. A group of kids from the art club made dozens of colorful get-well cards for Rosa. They drew pictures of flowers, hearts, and musical notes. They wrote messages of hope and encouragement. One card said, "Your daughter is amazing. You must be so proud. Another said, We are all cheering for you, Mrs. Rosa. The cards were collected in a big basket and delivered to the hospital. When Rosa saw them, she broke down in tears. She held each card gently in her trembling hands, reading every single message. She could not stop smiling, even as the tears rolled down her cheeks. Lily visited her mother that evening. She sat beside the hospital bed and held Rosa's hand. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just sat together in the quiet, feeling each other's presence. Finally, Rosa looked at her daughter and whispered, I heard what you did at the audition. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had not told her mother about the performance yet. She had wanted to keep it a surprise until the night of the talent show. But somehow, Rosa already knew. The nurses told me, Rosa continued, her voice weak but full of warmth. They said you played beautifully. They said you made everyone cry. Lily felt her eyes start to sting. She did not trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. Rosa squeezed her hand gently. Why did you not tell me you were learning to play? Lily swallowed hard. I wanted to surprise you, she said softly. I wanted to play your favorite song for your birthday. I have been practicing for 3 years. Every night after you fell asleep, I watched your old concert videos over and over. I wanted to play just like you. Rosa's eyes filled with fresh tears. She reached up and touched Lily's face, her fingers cold but tender. 3 years? She whispered. You did all that for me? Lily nodded again, her tears now falling freely. I love you, Mom. I just wanted to give you something beautiful. Rosa pulled her daughter close, wrapping her thin arms around her. They held each other for a long time, crying together, letting out all the pain and fear and love that had been building up for so long. No words were needed. The embrace said everything. The days leading up to the talent show were a blur of activity. The technology team came to the school and set up cameras and microphones on the stage. They tested the internet connection and made sure the live stream would work without any problems. At the hospital, another team prepared a large screen in Rosa's room so she could see everything clearly. Mrs. Reyes worked closely with Lily to make sure she was ready. They practiced together after school every day. Mrs. Reyes gave her tips on posture, breathing, and how to handle nerves. But mostly, she just listened. She let Lily talk about her mother, about her fears, about her hopes. She became more than a teacher. She became a friend. On the night before the show, Lily could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What if she made a mistake? What if the live stream failed? What if her mother was too weak to watch? The fear was overwhelming. But then she remembered something her mother had told her a long time ago. It was during one of Rosa's concerts, when Lily was just a little girl. She had asked her mother if she ever got scared before a performance. Rosa had smiled and said, Every single time. But I do not play to be perfect. I play to share my heart. And the heart does not know how to make mistakes. Lily held on to those words as she finally drifted off to sleep. The next evening, the auditorium was packed. Every seat was taken. Parents, teachers, students, and even strangers who had heard the story on the news had come to watch. A large screen had been set up on one side of the stage, showing a live feed from the hospital. And there, on that screen, was Rosa. She was sitting up in her bed, supported by pillows. She looked tired and fragile, but her eyes were bright. A small smile played on her lips as she looked at the camera. Nurses stood nearby, some of them already wiping tears from their eyes. Lily stood backstage, peeking through the curtain. When she saw her mother's face on that big screen, her heart swelled with emotion. This was really happening. After 3 years of secrets and sacrifice, after all the pain and uncertainty, this moment had finally arrived. Mrs. Reyes walked over and placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. Are you ready? She asked gently. Lily took a deep breath. She thought about everything she had been through. She thought about all the people who had helped make this night possible. She thought about her mother, watching from that hospital bed, waiting to hear her play, and with a steady voice, she answered, "Yes, I am ready." The curtain opened slowly, and Lily walked out onto the stage. The auditorium fell silent. Hundreds of eyes followed her as she made her way toward the grand piano sitting under the bright lights. Her footsteps echoed softly against the wooden floor. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She glanced at the large screen on the side of the stage. There was her mother, watching from the hospital room, miles away. Rosa's face was pale and thin, but her eyes were shining with something that looked like pride. She lifted one weak hand and placed it over her heart. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Lily sat down on the piano bench and took a moment to steady herself. She looked out at the crowd. So many faces, so many strangers. But they were not here to judge her. They were here to witness something special. They were here because they believed in her story. They believed in love. She turned back to the screen and spoke softly into the microphone. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "This is for you, Mom. Everything I have learned, everything I have practiced, it was all for this moment. I love you more than I can ever say. This song is my gift to you." In the hospital room, Rosa pressed her hand harder against her chest. Tears were already streaming down her face. The nurses standing nearby reached for tissues, their own eyes red and wet. Lily placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes and took one final breath. And then, she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 filled the auditorium like a gentle wave. They were soft and delicate, floating through the air like whispers from another world. The audience sat perfectly still, afraid to even breathe. No one wanted to miss a single sound. Lily let the music carry her away. She was no longer on a stage in front of hundreds of people. She was back home, sitting beside her mother, on that old piano bench. She was a little girl again, watching Rosa's hands dance across the keys. She could hear her mother's voice in her ear, gentle and loving. "Feel the music, my darling. Let it speak for you." And speak it did. The melody grew stronger, building with emotion and power. Lily's fingers moved with grace and precision, hitting every note exactly as she had practiced. But this was more than just technique. This was her soul pouring out through the music. Every fear, every tear, every sleepless night she had spent learning this piece. It was all there, woven into every chord. In the audience, people began to cry. A mother in the third row held her daughter's hand tightly, tears running down both their faces. An older man near the back removed his glasses and wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. Even the students who had once laughed at Lily were now sitting in stunned silence. Their hearts cracked open by the beauty of what they were hearing. On the screen, Rosa was sobbing, but she was also smiling. It was a strange and beautiful combination. Joy and sorrow mixed together in a way that only a mother could understand. She watched her daughter play with a look of pure wonder. This was her little girl. Her quiet, shy, invisible little girl. And she was magnificent. The music swelled to its peak, filling every corner of the auditorium with sound. Lily played with everything she had, her body swaying, her fingers flying, her tears falling onto the keys. She did not hold back. She could not hold back. This was the moment she had been waiting for. This was her chance to say all the things she could never put into words. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for teaching me what music really means. Thank you for being my light in the darkness. I am so sorry you are hurting. I wish I could take it all away, but I cannot. So instead, I am giving you this. My heart, my soul, my everything." The final passage arrived, fast and demanding. Lily's hands moved with a speed that seemed almost impossible. The notes crashed and soared, building toward the climax. And then, with one last powerful chord, it was over. Lily's hands dropped to her sides, her head bowed, her shoulders shook as she tried to catch her breath. The auditorium was completely silent for a moment that felt like forever. And then the applause began. It started slowly, just a few hands clapping together. But within seconds, it exploded into a roar. People jumped to their feet. They cheered. They whistled. They cried. The sound was deafening, a wave of love and admiration crashing over the stage. But Lily was not looking at the crowd. She was looking at the screen. Rosa was clapping too, her weak hands barely making a sound. But her face said everything. She was glowing. She was proud. She was at peace. She mouthed 3 words to the camera, and even though there was no sound, Lily understood them perfectly. "I love you." Lily smiled through her tears. She placed her hand over her own heart, mirroring her mother's gesture from earlier. For a moment, it felt like they were in the same room, holding each other close, connected by something stronger than distance, or illness, or time. The applause continued for nearly 5 minutes. People did not want to stop. They did not want the moment to end. When Lily finally stood up and took a small bow, the cheering only grew louder. Flowers were thrown onto the stage. Students rushed forward to hug her. Mrs. Reyes was crying so hard she could barely speak. That night, Lily went to the hospital to see her mother. Rosa was exhausted but happy. She held Lily's hand and told her over and over again how proud she was. She said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. She said Lily had given her a gift that no medicine could ever match. They stayed together until late into the night, talking, laughing, and sometimes just sitting in peaceful silence. For those few hours, the sickness did not matter. The fear did not matter. All that mattered was the love between a mother and her daughter. 3 weeks later, Rosa passed away quietly in her sleep. Lily was by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of love until the very end. It was the hardest day of her life. A piece of her heart left with her mother that night and would never come back. But even in her grief, Lily found comfort in one thing. She had done it. She had given her mother the gift she had been working toward for 3 years. Rosa had heard her play. Rosa had seen her shine. Rosa had left this world, knowing how deeply she was loved. In the years that followed, Lily continued to play the piano. She practiced every day, just as she had when her mother was alive. She entered competitions. She won awards. She earned a scholarship to a famous music school. And eventually, she became a professional pianist, performing on stages all around the world. But no matter how big the concert hall or how loud the applause, Lily always did one thing before every performance. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph, worn and folded from years of being carried. She placed it gently on the piano and looked at her mother's smiling face. Then she would say 5 simple words, the same words she had spoken on that unforgettable night in the school auditorium. "This one is for you, Mom." And somewhere, in a place beyond the stars, Rosa was listening. She was smiling, and she was proud.